Hey there, my name is Paul. I'm a test rider for 29er Online. Most recently, I've been riding the Specialized Camber. It's a comp model. It's a carbon 29er. I've really enjoyed this bike, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of its strengths, weaknesses, and who might be the best person to ride the bike. Okay, first I want to talk about a few of the weaknesses. This bike had very few of those, in my opinion. I thought it rode really well, and any weaknesses would only be to point out some of the insufficiencies that this bike may have, maybe not relative to other bikes, because I felt like this bike overall was an excellent ride. I did feel like in some of the climbing situations that it felt a little bit sluggish when compared to riding my hardtail. But then again, it's not a hardtail, it is a full suspension bike, and so I think relative to other full suspension bikes, it actually climbed fairly well. I lost traction a few times in some of my uphill climbs, but we are riding with a fairly heavily inflated tire, and it's geared really for fast trail riding right now. I think for me, the size may have been just a little bit small. I'm 6'2", and this is a large frame. I may actually be a little bit more comfortable on an extra large frame. I felt like the cockpit space was a little bit small for me. We have the specs pretty much maxed out as far as the ride goes. It handled well, and I did enjoy it, but I just felt like I probably could have gotten a little bit more power out of my pedal stroke if I'd had just a little bit more top tube on this bike, top tube space. I just felt a little bit compressed in the pedaling, but as far as the single track, it handled really well. I was able to throw the bike around, and that felt good. Alright, I'd like to talk a little bit about what the strengths are on this bike. I found while riding the bike, it was a very stiff ride. It felt good. That's what I like. I'm used to predominantly riding a hardtail, and this one acted like a hardtail on the trail, yet it took the bumps like a full suspension bike does. In the cornering, I noticed immediately that the linkage was very tight. It felt very stiff in the corners and tracked well. It didn't feel sloppy or noodly at all, or very little. It certainly had some compression there due to the fact that it is a full suspension, but it felt very strong, and I felt very confident in tight turns. Even with the fact that it's a 29er, it still cornered very well. I also noticed the press fit bottom bracket was an excellent feature. It made me feel very connected to the drivetrain. I felt like my power application going into the pedals was really transferred quickly into the rear wheel. And also enjoyed having a tapered steer tube. It really made the front end tight. I felt a lot more rigid here, and it gave me a lot of confidence in the descent. I wasn't afraid to just let go of the brakes and let the bike take over and just hang on, and really enjoyed some of the downhills on this thing. It's not a cross-country bike. It certainly had more features of a trail bike. It wasn't quite as responsive, but I felt very comfortable on it. I also felt very comfortable attacking log jams and bunny hops and things of that nature. It really it eats up the trail well. All right, so we've talked about a couple of the performance and component-related items on the bike. I'd like to just talk a little bit about who might enjoy riding this bike. I really enjoyed riding it. As I mentioned before, I'm traditionally a hardtail guy. I do a lot of racing, endurance stuff. I could see where this bike would be a lot of fun on a really long ride. It may not be the first bike that I pull out for a really important race, and it may not be for that guy who's really intense about racing all the time, but it's definitely for somebody who enjoys the thrill of the trail, that wants to get out for a long weekend ride and throw the bike around and really cut loose. It's giving, and it's a very comfortable, enjoyable ride. I certainly think that it would be a great backup bike to my hardtail, and I certainly wouldn't mind having it hanging on the wall.